sure, not everything that I do is exactly how NRHA does it, and vice versa. That doesn't make me right and him wrong, or vice versa. But any great horseman that changes a horse's program to another great horseman, there's very little tweaking that has to be done to get those horse and human back on the same page together, okay? You know, really when it really came down to it, he was at the top of the list from the beginning, but I really wanted to do my homework and go through as many trainers as I knew in the business that could fit that criteria. And there was others that fit the criteria. I'm not going to say there weren't.
You know, one thing that's really special about this project is the fact that Titan hasn't been shown yet. You know, he's a 4-year-old. How many times do you hear an owner or a trainer having a great one that's by Gunner out of Princess and Diamond, that's doing great? He stops a 1, he turns a 1, and they hold him back and they don't show him as a 3-year-old. That talks a lot and speaks a lot for me about Clinton and the truth behind his business and behind his word. When he tells you guys that the horse is priority, this is the truth right here. This is what shows what he really thinks, meaning that he's had a great one and he didn't want to push it too hard. He wanted him to mature into himself and he wanted him to have a long career. So just being part of it is something great. You know, that we're probably going to show him one of the first few times. It's going to be at the Las Vegas at the Wildcard Classic. It's a show that just started last year. I was behind that with Amanda Brumley. We came up with the idea of having a futurity or derby, whatever you want to call it, for 4-year-olds that have not been shown as 3-year-olds. And I think this whole thing is coming together just great, meaning that you've got a horse show that's new with a new philosophy. You know, here in the States, I come from Europe, we have a little bit different mentality over there. People are not pushing the young horses maybe as hard as some of the people do around here, just because they know that the long career is probably more important, just a shortcoming and a few dollars as 3-year-olds and then nothing else. So I'm not, obviously I've made my career, like Clinton would say, I've made a lot of money showing 3-year-olds, and I think that there's a lot of horses that are great as 3-year-olds and they keep going on. But just the fact that Clinton has held Titans back to go and improve in his career as an older horse, I think it's a great thing. So being part of that, I think it's something unique and it's something that's never been done before, and as always, something great. Every time I practice a piece of the pattern with my hand down and letting the horse make a mistake, I always finish that session by reminding that horse everything that we worked on for the last 1.5 years or 2. Now, Titan here, he's got a great disposition, so you know how he is. I mean, he's always been like laid back. You've watched all of his series. Clinton did a great job, so he's pretty relaxed. I don't have to probably do a whole lot of that on him, but just so that you know, I want you to be aware that every time you expose your horse to the show pen, meaning that you're gonna leave your hand down, let him be a little distracted, what I like to do is follow up by making sure that in that maneuver you go back and do a little bit of training, so that you're not going to take him back to the barn and he's thinking, oh, okay, I can keep my ears up and do whatever I want when I go out there. So what I'm going to do now is follow up and making sure I'm going to do the same maneuver, but remind Titan to stay soft when he's going fast, maybe checking some steering and take him away from that circle. Things that I wouldn't do in the show pen, but that I want to make sure that I've got on my horse every single day. Every time I get on my horse, there's going to be a few buttons that I want to check and make sure that are working just right at the beginning of the lesson and at the end of the lesson. So we're going to follow up our fast circle and small circles, but making sure that every once in a while I just pick my hand up, I drive him forward into his face, and he's soft. And I'm going to stay here until I don't feel any resistance on my hand and on my legs. A lot of people concentrate on the head down. What Clinton and I have a lot in common is that we're paying attention to the whole body. I'm not concentrating on keeping Titan's head low. He does that naturally. What I'm concentrating on is making sure that his back is round, that he's off my legs, and that he's holding the correct position when I turn him loose, which is right there where he's at. Now we're going to speed him up. And I don't need to go real fast now because I'm probably going to do 4, 5, 6 circles. And I'm going to check on that same button, softness, going at a higher speed. I'm going to maintain the speed, pick up on my hand. I have no problem using the other hand if you need to. Right now at this point, I don't feel I need it on Titan, but you can go to 2 hands. Just to follow up and remind him of what we want. If you notice now that I softened him up a couple times, he's loping a fast circle, a lot more framed up and a lot more lower headed than what he was before. This is eventually what I'd love for him to stay at all the time, but I need to make sure that I can go show him even if he's not in that perfect position. Now I'm keeping that speed, he feels great. Probably gonna slow him down once in the center, but if you'll notice when I slow him down, I go right to his face and make sure he holds the correct position. And what I'm gonna do, go into a counter canter. What this is doing, you're reminding Titan that every time we slow down, we gotta keep our shoulder up, drive with the hip underneath, and making sure that we stay framed up. If you slow down too many times and go into that small slow, you're gonna run into problems because they're gonna connect slowing down with turning and dropping their shoulder. And what's that gonna do? It's gonna disengage that hind quarter that you're so familiar with if you watch Clayton's videos. And bad things are gonna happen when the hind quarter is not under control anymore. If you notice, I haven't done anything new. It's probably things that you've seen before, but I'm gonna finish my lesson by making sure that my horse is always paying attention to me. The only thing I haven't checked with Titan today is making sure that he's listening to me for the slowdown part everywhere in the circle. It's a big deal for me that my horse is concentrating on me throughout the whole circle and not only when he comes towards the center. If you only slow down in the center, these horses are going to start running around in that big circle free with their ears up, and they may even gain some speed when you go show. For that reason, what we're gonna do next is making sure that those brakes are tight everywhere through the big circle, not just in the small circle, not just in the center. I'm gonna put him back in a big fat circle. And this time I'm gonna slow him down somewhere different. That was good there. You listened to me. It could have been a little tighter. That's why I'm following with my hand and say, hey, when you see that leg opening to slow down, you got to get right to this position. I really want him solid about getting to that framed up position without me having to help him with my hand. So it's going to be a lot of repetition. Now we're going to go do it somewhere else. The reason why I'm doing it in the corners or when I'm approaching the corners, because if I have to, I'm gonna have enough room to canter my horse into the corner. What does it mean if I have to? If I feel that that horse is dropping his shoulder, he's not engaging his hip, I'm gonna take him and canter him. I do a lot of this exercise because I want him to relate slowing down with engaging that hip and staying loping strong behind. If I had to do it right here by the wall, I don't have room to do that. So I want to make sure that I take these four corners of the circle or of the arena. The circle doesn't have the corners. And when I approach that corner, I'm going to ask him to slow down. And if I have to, I've got enough room to canter him into the corner. What that's going to do is making sure that your horse, every time you ask him to slow down, he's going to stay strong behind. And when you can go show, you can really come to the center and just do a big move, and the judges are going to love that. The minute I'm done with a section, to where I'm preparing my horse to go show, I'm gonna ask myself what comes on after that section. What naturally happens after a set of circles is usually a lead change and moving on to the other set of circles. So that's exactly what we're gonna practice on next. Before we get to the turnarounds and the stops, I wanna make sure that I spend enough time getting my horse used to switching from left to right in the circles, changing leads the correct way, and making sure that he's comfortable going fast, slow, change, and introduce that. If you think about it, you spend probably 3/4 or a good half of the time in the arena circling and changing leads when you go show. So you gotta concentrate a lot at home on that. And it's also a good way to start your horse thinking about the show pen without having to rattle him all up and get him really wound up about a lot of speed and a lot of fast things happening one after the next. As I said before, with Titan's demeanor, we don't have to worry about him getting upset or getting to where he's anxious because he's always laid back and waiting on me. But it's a good thing to keep that in mind because you may encounter a horse later on that's a little bit hotter and you're gonna need to be careful how much you do with it. So what we've done so far, we've loved from fast circles to slow circles. That's just a small part of what we're gonna be covering. What we need to cover next, as I said, is the lead change.
Hey mate, I hope you enjoyed the training session today with Andre Fapani and Titan. We'll see you next week, mate.